The series begins with our protagonist Jimmy battling against another trainer using a Hitmonlee. Jimmy sends out his ace Pokemon, his Typhlosion, and after a quick battle, he wins the battle. Jimmy shows his nice personality here by congratulating the other trainer on an excellent battle and shows off what's gonna become his catchphrase: "You rock, you rule."
You rock, you rule!
Not sure how I feel about that one. We then get a cool panning cinematic shot of the Pokemon world as the narrator explains that the movie will be about Raikou. Yes, a movie, it refers to itself as one despite it being episode 1. After being shown a secret Team Rocket hideout, we get introduced to our antagonists of this episode, Attila and Hun. They're on a mission to capture Raikou, and to do so they're going to use this mysterious crystal. The lead scientist with voice acting that makes me want to cut my ears off explains that this crystal has the power to control electricity all around it, and it attracts electric type Pokemon, which is perfect for getting Raikou. After arriving at the Pokemon Center, Jimmy runs into his childhood friend Marina, who also got her starter Pokemon at the same time as him. They clearly like each other, but there's a third person in this equation, Vincent, or Jackson as he's known in the original series. He had a battle with Ash in the Silver Conference. After some excessive flirting, Jimmy and the Ultra Land simp Marina decide to do a 2-on-2 battle. Marina starts off with her Jigglypuff named Pink, and Jimmy sends out his Beedrill. Jigglypuff goes for Sync, but Beedrill's wings vibrate too fast, so Beedrill is unable to hear it. Good old original series logic. After some back and forth, Beedrill's Twin Eel is enough to knock out Jigglypuff. Marina then sends out her Wani Wani the Croconaut, and Jimmy recalls Beedrill to send out his Typhlosion. Before the battle can conclude, a thunder strikes and they decide to call it off before heading back to the Pokemon Center. Mischievous runs away from the group, leading them to where Attila and Hun are carrying out their plan to gather electric Pokemon to capture Raikou. After they have caused harm to a bunch of Pokemon, Raikou comes right on cue, and the battle commences. Jimmy steps in to defend Raikou against Attila and Hun, and they begin a 2-on-1 battle. Attila and Hun sending out Skarmory and Steelix as Jimmy sends out his Typhlosion. It's too much to handle for Jimmy, but Marina steps in and uses Parashong with Mischievous, which basically immobilizes Skarmory and Steelix. Jimmy sends out his Beedrill and pin missiles the mech, destroying it in the process and causing the Team Rocket members to flee the scene, leaving Raikou behind. Jimmy and Marina take it to the Pokemon Center, and Professor L makes an appearance, telling Marina to make sure it's released from captivity as soon as it's been fully healed.
Meanwhile, Attila and Hun are planning another bait for Raikou to take. As soon as Raikou is charging up, we get introduced to another character whose name got swapped, Eugene, or as he was known in the original series as Yuzin. Marina immediately simps for him, so I guess she really has a thing for dudes in capes. Later that day, with Raikou fully charged, it senses Team Rocket's plan in action and breaks out of captivity and goes to the source of the problem where Attila and Hun are waiting for it. As Raikou keeps attacking with no avail, Jimmy, Marina, and Eugene pull up to defend it. As Hun commands Steelix to use a rock throw on the kids, a Meganium comes and saves them. This person has a cape and must be loved by Marina. But it's just Vincent. As he tries to save the day, his grass-type moves are ineffective, so Eugene takes charge but literally gets crushed by rocks. I guess he's dead. As Raikou is about to be enveloped by the mystery crystal, Jimmy, Marina, and Vincent combine their strength to push back the force field. In the explosion, Attila and Hun take off with Raikou, but Vincent notices that Marina is missing too. Marina was accidentally pulled along with Raikou, and she and Raikou find a way to open the door before Raikou yeets himself off the helicopter. Jimmy and Vincent get a hold of Marina by calling her Pokegear, and when they do, there's a funny back and forth between Vincent and Attila. We also get some darker scenes for Pokemon as Attila pushes Marina and has Mischievous in a chokehold. Third time's a charm as a Team Rocket duo go and set off the mystery crystal once more, but this time, Eugene, Jimmy, and Vincent are right on their tail. This time, Raikou is sending its electric attacks from outside the crystal's range, rendering it basically useless. And after a quick reunion of the trio and some more Jimmy x Marina shipping moments, Attila and Hun attack again. Finally, Eugene is going to do something, but this time, Raikou interrupts him and protects its new friends. Now that it's learned where the power source from the crystal is, it goes and destroys the machine, and now seemingly all is over as it can use its electric attacks again. But as Raikou goes for a finishing blow on Team Rocket, once again the attack is redirected to the crystal and fires back. It must still not be broken. Now that the controls are broken, the crystal gets twice as strong by having the electricity connect directly with the Pokemon. Eugene comes up with an admittedly extreme plan of going all or nothing where they will all be either safe or not at all. The trio's Pokemon go rushing in to save the Raikou, and Eugene finally joins the fight. There's quite an epic back and forth between Team Rocket and the protagonists as they are fighting to get back control of the crystal. Their plan changes and they go to attack the kids as that'll distract the Pokemon. But Jimmy outsmarts the Steelix, sending it off into the river. Just as it looks like they will win, Steelix comes back from nowhere and the kids go to protect their Pokemon, but Steelix will use Crunch on them anyways. Raikou realizes the danger they are in and breaks out of the crystal's hold and hits the ground type with a powerful electric attack. With the overwhelming strength of Raikou, the crystal has no more power. So Attila and Hun make an escape as Raikou then destroys the crystal. After making friends with Jimmy, Marina, and Vincent, Raikou escapes back into the wild and the friends continue on their path to become better Pokemon trainers. The episode begins with Ash, Misty, and Brock's Pokemon playing snow bowling in the winter field, with Pikachu getting a strike, Cyndaquil getting a gutter, and Totodile being Totodile. So yeah, the ball gets stuck in Totodile's mouth, causing him to fire a water gun. And coincidentally, a Delibird is somehow flying within its firing range, so it gets hit by the giant ice ball, falling straight to where Meowth, Wobbuffet, and a Skarmory are innocently doing their stuff. The commotion angers Skarmory, provoking it to use what I think is Whirlwind, blasting Team Rocket and Delibird off, and causing the presents in Delibird's bag to fall everywhere. The gang then pursues Delibird, and Noctowl with the help of Chikorita and Bulbasaur saves the bird from crashing. Then we get this cute scene of the gang trying to wake Delibird up until Cyndaquil tickles him to awakening. But then, Delibird realizes that the presents he was carrying are gone, causing him to freak out. And so, the gang decides to split into two groups to find the missing presents. Pikachu's group discovers the first gift on the roof of a boat, so Totodile jumps off the bridge to chase after the boat. I don't know why he didn't just jump straight onto the boat while it was passing the bridge. But it's fine, at least we got a scene of Totodile's amazingly fast swimming skills as he catches up to the boat and grabs the present. But the boat is headed to a different direction, so Totodile quickly springs off as Chikorita alertedly uses Vine Whip to grab hold of Totodile. On the other hand, Bulbasaur's group is found searching in the forest, then we get this cute scene of Psyduck and a group of Gloom. I don't know what was the point of that, but Noctowl uses its psychic powers to find the second present, so with the help of Geodude's tackle, they are able to get it from up the tree. Back to Pikachu's group. This time, they're in the narrow street, searching in trash cans, but Cyndaquil starts falling asleep, so Pikachu wakes him up, shocking the fiery mouse to the point of stumbling on his back. But thanks to that, Cyndaquil is able to find the third present stuck in some wires, but a random A-bomb quickly takes the present, provoking Totodile to throw a snowball which misses. Chikorita then hurls a snowball, but A-bomb fires it back. Third time's the charm as Totodile manages to hit A-bomb, causing it to fall and run off, so we're 3 presents down. Hours later, the gang meets up, thinking they found all the presents, but one present is still missing. Delibird only has a few hours left before Christmas, so they need to hurry. After a few seconds, Noctowl just suddenly finds the final present in a tree. But as he's trying to take it, the present slips and starts flying. Chikorita and Bulbasaur try to grab it with Vine Whip, only to slam it further away. Totodile then goes full speed ahead and finally catches the present. But this happened. Just as all hope is gone, we see A-bomb capturing the present with its tail and gives it back to the gang. Santa Claus then arrives in a Stantler sled, picking up Delibird, and the first part of the episode ends with the gang saying goodbye to Santa Claus and Delibird.
And now for the second part of the episode. In the middle of the forest, the gang except Noctowl are having fun crafting their own snowman. But then Totodile just builds a giant snowman which catches everybody's attention, so they begin decorating it. After a long day's work, they finally complete their masterpiece, transforming their snowman into a Snorlax. Later that night, Pikachu awakens from his sleep and sees an icy Snorlax peeking in from the window. This gets everyone excited, so they venture outside and follow Snorlax all the way to the cliff. But as they're grabbing a fruit from the tree, the cliff breaks and they slide into the sea. While drifting away, the gang catches a glimpse of a beautiful aurora in the sky until they find themselves in the middle of a whirlpool. Pikachu and Totodile try their best to stop it, but to no avail. Then Snorlax uses what looks like icy wind and basically freezes the entire whirlpool. This creates an amazing underwater aquarium where we get to see the gang being wholesome and making friends with the water Pokemon that live in the sea. When it's time to leave, Totodile, Snorlax, Chikorita, and Bulbasaur work together to make a ship made of ice to go back home. But then Geodude, who did nothing throughout the entire episode, decides to jump up and down, which causes the ship to dismantle, causing everyone to sink. But luckily, a pair of Lapras helps them and a group of icy Snorlax wave them goodbye. The gang then falls asleep while riding on Lapras, and when morning came, Pikachu and the gang awaken inside the Pokemon Center. And when they check outside, the Snorlax snowman is still there. Turns out everything that happened was just a dream that they all shared. This episode begins right after Ash, Misty, and Brock parted ways at the end of the Silver Conference. Being touched by Harrison's great character, Brock decided to go back home to his family, the Harrisons. While overseeing the city, he is stopped by a strange man that tells him the city is cursed, but the strange man ends up being Brock's father. This was a cool callback to episode 5 of the original series where the exact same thing happened to Ash and Misty. Brock's father informs him that his mother has done horrible things to the gym, and they both decide to take a look. After going home and reuniting with his 9 siblings, Brock and his father, accompanied by his mother, go to the new Peter gym, which has become water-themed. In order to get control back of the gym, Brock asks his father and mother to do a one-on-one battle and the winner can control the gym again. However, if the mother wins, all of Brock's siblings have to become water-type trainers. With Brock refereeing, the battle begins and his mother sends out Meryl against his father's golem. Can I just take the time to say that his brother Forrest has some of the best lines on the show?
I guess that's what they mean by sink like a stone.
But I've got to stay focused if I'm gonna become a great Pokémon breeder.
Talk about the girls.
In another callback to the original series, Brock said that he lost to Ash despite having a type advantage, so his father can do it too. Flynn starts the battle with an earthquake which seems to do a lot of damage, causing the water in the gym to go crazy, and Meryl can't stay afloat. However, Lola counters with Surf and one-shots the golem as it drowns to death before being saved by Blastoise.
After defeating Flint, Lola is then challenged by the determined Brock as he doesn't want the pewter gym to be a water-type gym. At the dinner table, Flint and Lola announce that the pewter gym will become both a water and rock-type gym, but this angers Forrest, who runs away. One of Brock's sisters mentions that Forrest wanted to be the gym leader when he gets older, so Brock goes after him and goes to comfort him. He gives Forrest some advice and tells him to watch his battle with their mom tomorrow as he will prove to him that rock types can beat water types too. The next day rolls around and Brock challenges Lola to a one-on-one battle as Brock sends out Onix and Lola sends out Mantine. Onix goes for Dig and drains the water out of the pool, leaving Mantine splashing about. Dig connects, sending Mantine flying, and then it literally starts flying and counter-attacking with Bubble Beam. After a long back and forth, Onix emerges victorious, winning the battle for Brock. As per their agreement, the gym will remain a rock-type gym. Brock decides to keep his Onix at the gym to help Forrest train for when the time comes for him to take over the gym. Brock is set to leave for his adventure in the Hoenn region and join his buddy, Ash. And we see him spot his iconic Hoenn attire before setting off into the sunset. Similar to the Brock episode last week, this episode also begins just after Ash, Misty, and Brock parted ways by the end of the Silver Conference. Misty heads home to Cerulean City where she takes over the Cerulean Gym as her sisters are going on a vacation. Along the way, her attention is caught by a television report saying that the Pokemon Inspection Agency is closing down substandard gyms that are unsafe, unclean, and uncool. Misty overhears that the PIA are on their way to Cerulean City, so she hurries home to make sure that the gym looks good before the PIA arrives. But as soon as she gets home, she is greeted by a rampaging Gyarados wreaking havoc for all the people and Pokemon in the gym. She tries to return Gyarados to the Pokeball, but Nurse Joy recommends not to. This causes Misty to battle Gyarados. But before she could do that, the Sea Serpent gushes off a powerful wave that stops her from battling it. With no choice, Misty, Nurse Joy, and some fans of the Cerulean Sisters who were there to look after the gym before Misty arrives, leave the place to think of a plan on how to stop Gyarados. We then get a cute reunion with Horsey and Starmie as Gyarados quickly scares them off. Misty, being the aspiring water-type master, finds herself reflecting about her traumatizing past. As a baby, Misty innocently crawled inside a Gyarados' mouth, which caused her to develop a phobia of Gyarados. But she realizes that to be a good water-type gym leader, Misty has to get over her fear and solve the problem by herself. Misty's first plan on taming Gyarados is to dress up in her mermaid outfit and perform an underwater ballet. This will hopefully help Gyarados remember the times when it danced with Misty as a Magikarp in the Misty Mermaid and recreate the bond they had forged together. Kalos Queen in the making? Okay, but how can she talk underwater? Anyways, this plan doesn't work though, as Gyarados just creates a whirlpool that causes Misty to faint. While unconscious, Misty dreams of Ash and Brock congratulating her for being the new Cerulean City gym leader. They slowly leave her though, and give her some reassurance that she'll do great on her own and that they believe in her. She then finds her foot wrapped by Gyarados, and this scares her enough to wake up.
Next, Misty tries to return Gyarados back to its Pokeball, but since it doesn't obey, she went with her last resort of trapping Gyarados in a cage, much to her reluctance. And while uttering monologues of doubt and surrender, the invincible Pokemon brothers show up to challenge Misty to a Pokemon battle with the Cerulean City gym leader status on the line. They even get a ton of people to watch the battle. Kin opens up with Hitmonchan against Misty Staryu, but Hitmonchan struggles to maneuver himself underwater, so the heroic Staryu tries to rescue him. But Hitmonchan was only faking its struggle and sucker punches Staryu into oblivion. Nurse Joy calls this illegal and gives the win to Misty anyway. The next battle was between Corsola and Tentacruel. Tentacruel goes for Bubble Beam, and it looks like Corsola's down with those swirly eyes, but Misty calls for cover and commands Corsola to retaliate with Tackle. But all three of the Invincible brothers joined the party as they sent their own Tentacruels, making the battle a 3-on-1. Nurse Joy points out the violation and declares him disqualified from the battle. The Tentacruels attack Corsola with Poison Sting, provoking Misty to dive down and rescue it. The brothers then command their Tentacruels to attack Gyarados as Misty pulls out an Ash Ketchum and swims in front of Gyarados to protect it from Poison Sting. This act of selflessness thaws Gyarados' frozen heart and awakens it into saving Misty as it breaks out of the cage and scoops the semi-unconscious Misty out of the water, eliciting loud cheers from the audience. The brothers try to attack Gyarados, but they are no match for it. Misty commands it to use Hyper Beam, landing the finishing blow on the Tentacruels, and then a Hydro Pump blasting the brothers out of the gym. Gyarados is finally tamed and rubs its face into Misty, creating a newfound bond between Misty and the Pokemon she's been terrified of her entire life. Misty asks if Gyarados would go back to the Pokeball, to which it happily agrees. Nurse Joy congratulates Misty on a job well done and tells her that she's proven herself to be a fine gym leader. She goes on to say that the Cerulean gym has passed inspections, revealing a plot twist that Nurse Joy was actually a Pokemon inspection agent all this time. With Cerulean City back in business, Nurse Joy says that she's going to the Hoenn region. Misty asks Nurse Joy if she could do her a favor and tell Ash that she finally made it as a gym leader, but that never happened. The episode ends with Misty again reflecting on her dream as she realizes what Ash and Brock were saying were true, that she can become a strong gym leader on her own. The episode begins with an evil scientist plotting his attack against a random village by sending a robot to attack it. One of the villagers named Kate prays that the angels will come to save them, and in perfect title card fashion, Meowth explains that they aren't angels, and Team Rocket comes in after the blastoff. They explain that this blastoff was caused by Tailo, so basically it happened right after Ash caught his Tailo in Hoenn. Team Rocket explains to the townspeople that they aren't angels, but in fact evil. With the townspeople still thinking that they're heroes, Team Rocket decides to destroy the robot that they think is there to protect the village. The robot continues ravaging its way towards the village, but as Meowth falls down and all looks hopeless, a watering can comes out and waters a flower. Meowth realizes that the robot is peaceful, so Team Rocket takes this opportunity to tackle the robot alongside their Arbok and Weezing to destroy the robot. Yes, Arbok and Weezing are still there with them, which was a nice touch, since continuity wise they would be released back into the wild just a few episodes later, so it was like a last hurrah for them. Their plan backfired as the village people actually saw the robot as their enemy, so instead of getting frightened by Team Rocket, it only pushed the villagers to think that they're actually heroes. After taking down the robot, Team Rocket, or as they're being called Team Righteous, are shown old footage of their heroics, which is actually just old footage from a movie, but the townspeople think it's the real news. As they're watching the footage, Kate asks a favor from Team Rocket to help them defeat the mechanical monsters. Jessie hatches a plan that if they can manage to take down the robots, the villagers would praise them and let them do everything that they want, and probably even take over the village and make it a Team Rocket fortress, thus leading them to agree to Kate's favor. After slightly modifying the old robot into a new Meowth robot, Team Rocket leads a charge to the top of the hill where the evil scientist is and the townspeople follow them.
Upon arriving at the castle, they are greeted by a huge mech 4 times the size of the robot, so Team Rocket gets prepared for a mecha fight. When the battle begins, the big mecha opens its door and a bunch of random little cars with bouquets of flowers come out, welcoming everyone on the top. But Team Rocket won't fall for such an easy trap, so they begin destroying all the mini cars one at a time. After fighting with the robot and leading them inside the castle, they come to realize that the scientist is in fact not evil, but just wants to make friends in that he was sending the robots to help them with farming. Now Team Rocket comes up with a plan to use the scientist's robot-making abilities for their own good by tricking him into thinking that he is making robots for the townspeople and to make friends. While making their announcement to the townspeople, a flock of Tailo come flying in, and they are a threat to the village, so once again, Team Righteous has to save the day. The scientist equips their mech with a flying pack and they are off to fight the Tailo. Once in the middle of the fight, Professor Brown comes up with the idea that they should suck in Tailo like a vacuum, and then send them out the other way never to be seen again. And just like that, the townspeople who hated Professor Brown all this time changed their minds and he is now proclaimed a hero. The townspeople also want him to make more robots for them in order for the village to thrive and he can be like a leader. So now, Team Rocket contemplates staying in this village as heroes because it was nice to be treated as such for a day. But James accidentally launches the robot and without knowing how to control it, they fly out, never to be seen again. They fly so far that they land in Petalburg Woods, just within sight of the twerps. And so they vow to stop that hero-thinking nonsense and go make another scheme to get Pikachu. The episode takes place in Professor Oak's laboratory where the Pokemon are just chilling and doing their normal routines, not knowing that someone has already infiltrated the place. That someone being Cassidy and Brick. In typical Team Rocket fashion, they plan on stealing all the Pokemon that reside in the lab. Meanwhile, after feeding the Pokemon, Tracy hears the doorbell ringing and goes in to check who it is, and it turns out to be everyone's favorite Magikarp salesman, who is trying to sell Tracy a Magikarp. Tracy declines the offer as Professor Oak approaches the scene in anger. The salesman quickly leaves, and Professor Oak tells that it's wrong to buy and sell Pokemon. A second after, the doorbell rings again, and thinking it's a Magikarp salesman again, Tracy says that he's gonna teach him a lesson. But it's actually just Delia and Mimey, who brought cookies for snacks. In another scene, Bulbasaur is happily walking around the forest and comes across a Nidoqueen and Golem, who we thought were Gary's Pokemon, but are actually Cassidy and Bill in disguise. Bulbasaur just ignores them and continues on with his life. The next Pokemon they come across is Totodile. Whether he figured out their disguises or just wanted to play, Totodile hit both of them with Water Gun, causing Team Rocket to use their own version of Mirror Coat, knocking him out. Then, as Cyndaquil is peacefully sleeping, Cassidy accidentally steps on it, provoking the Fiery Mouse to spout a big fire. But Burp uses a fire extinguisher to put out the flame on the poor guy's back. Bulbasaur and Oddish notice this and try to inform Professor Oak about the commotion. He's busy though, so the trio goes to Noctowl instead for it to scour the area. They then drag Tracy out of his job to help them, as Noctowl uses its X-ray vision to find out that Team Rocket are behind the Nidoqueen and Golem costumes and hurriedly informs the gang about it. Cassidy and Buzz manage to infiltrate the inside of the lab as Professor Oak asks Delia to stay for dinner. OMG, elder shipping confirmed?
Tracy and the Pokemon finally inform Professor Oak about the break-in, but as soon as they check the Pokeball storage, everything is gone. Professor Oak speculates that Team Rocket must be behind all of this, but Tracy adds that the Team Rocket he knows couldn't pull a heist this smoothly without messing it up, so they conclude that perhaps Team Rocket hired some specialists to do the job. Tracy then tells Bayleaf, Oddish, Bulbasaur, Cyndaquil, and Noctowl to spread the word to everyone about the robbery. As Cassidy and Bob try to get away, still wearing their disguises, a Nidoking suddenly appears and starts hugging Cassidy, thinking she's a real Nidoqueen. As soon as they get away from the Nidoking, a Muk then hugs the Muk costume that they used to hide the Pokeballs in. On the other hand, we're shown that Noctowl discovers Team Rocket's helicopter, but Cassidy and Clutch are trapped by Muk before they could even get into their getaway vehicle. Totodile appears out of nowhere and fires a water gun, which allows Team Rocket to escape from Muk's hold. Totodile proceeds to tell Oak and Delia the location of the thieves, and as Cassidy and Hutch reach the helicopter, they find themselves trapped by basically everyone living in Professor Oak's lab. They recite their iconic motto, as Professor Oak lectures them that it's bad to steal Pokemon. They engage in a battle with Houndour and Hitmontop against Bulbasaur, Scyther, and Mr. Mime. Team Rocket are easily defeated with Cyndaquil burning them a flamethrower and Bulbasaur unleashing a powerful solar beam. Totodile lands the finishing blow and blasts off Team Rocket again. They manage to gather all the Pokeballs back, and the episode ends with Professor Oak reciting a poem and the narrator uttering these final words.
And Ms. Ketchum felt for sure that Professor Oak's love poem was about her, but
Elder shipping is officially confirmed, boys. The episode begins with Missy doing her daily routine as a gym leader. This includes overfeeding Horsey just for it to only eat one of the 100 of foods provided. As Missy is feeding other Pokemon, Psyduck falls into the pool, and being as useless and adorable as ever, Psyduck still can't swim. While she is exasperated, she hears a voice from the front of the gym, and it's none other than Tracy. He explains that he's here to check up on the gym on order of Professor Oak. Like, really? Oak couldn't have just phoned Misty? I think we all know the real reason that he sent him out. Tracy came at the perfect time, as now he'll be Psyduck's personal swim instructor, and after many failed attempts, Psyduck decides to run away. As the doors open, he crashes into Sakura, who's a character that appeared in the Johto saga, and is here to challenge Misty to a battle. Sakura's collected 3 badges already and wanted to challenge Misty, who's in a completely different region. Yeah, that makes no sense to me either. Misty agreed to battle Sakura, but there's a problem. Misty is out of badges. This should be no problem as her sisters are out of town, but surely the official gym leader should have extras, but nope. Turns out Misty has to go to get the badges from a person named Kinzo who lives a couple towns away. Lucky for Misty, she won't have to go alone as Sakura and Tracy decide to tag along with her. While on their way to the destination, Sakura's Espeon runs off and leads them to a man who's knocked down and who's totally not Kinzo. After taking the man back to the cabin, he gives us the ultimate plot twist and reveals the fact that he was Kinzo all this time. He proclaims that he is the badge maker, but he won't be giving the badges easily, and they have to earn it. How can they earn the badges? Well, all they have to do is run miles and then engage in the badge making process themselves. There were some cool montages of Sakura, Tracy, and Misty working really hard to make the badges to their best abilities and really push themselves beyond what they thought they could possibly do.
After things are looking bright, Kinzo decides on one last challenge, which is challenging Misty to a battle. He sends out his Feraligatr, and as Misty is going to send out her Corsola, Psyduck comes shooting out of his Pokeball. He of course stands no chance against Feraligatr and just runs off before falling into the water. And of course, being unable to swim completely changed Kinzo's mind on the matter. He says that Misty is unworthy of receiving his badges before leaving them, and naturally, Misty blames her troubles on Psyduck. Moments later, Kinzo screeches at the fact that thieves broke into his house and stole his badges. My mind immediately went to Team Rocket, but it turns out it was just generic goons that look straight out of any generic 90s anime. Their Pokemon of choice, of course, are Zigzagoon and Poochyena, which are obvious promotion material and a tie into the anime considering the time that this episode was released in Japan. On top of this, Sakura sends out her Beautifly. She calls it her pride and joy, with the Espeon just standing on the sidelines like, oh really? After a back and forth, Psyduck eventually gets a headache and takes him out with a powerful psychic attack, and the day is saved. Kinzo realizes the true power that Psyduck has and hands Misty a badge case filled with a bunch of badges. Now, with the badges on hand, Tracy, Sakura, and Misty return to Cerulean Gym to continue where things left off. Sakura and Misty are in the middle of their official gym battle using one Pokemon each. Misty is using her ever-reliable Corsola as Sakura went with her pride and joy. No, not Beautifly, but Espeon. Espeon hits Corsola with a strong tackle attack. No, seriously, that's what they went with, before Corsola fired back with Spike Cannon. Espeon takes this opportunity to dive underwater, but resurfaces and knocks Corsola down with a Swift. Worry not, for Recover is broken in the anime. And then, the battle is over with the Tackle and Psybeam combo. And with that, Sakura was declared the winner and Misty handed over an official badge. Sakura did a cute thing by giving Misty a Cascade badge too, the one that she made when they were at Kinzo's place. I guess Tracy just kept his in case he needs to enter the Indigo League at some point. The episode ends with Sakura saying that she wants to visit Professor Oak so Tracy will guide her. What's a good ship for Tracy and Sakura? Cause it seems Professor Oak taught him well. It's just another normal day in Pallet Town when the doorbell rings in Professor Oak's laboratory. Tracy goes on to check who it is, and it's none other than our favorite scruffy Pikachu, Sparky, who of course belongs to Richie. We then learn that Richie is visiting the lab to ask Professor Oak some advice on how to best evolve his Eevee. But this dialogue was only in the English dub, meaning that Richie doesn't actually have an Eevee in the original Japanese version. Tracy tells Richie that Professor Oak is doing a talk show on a TV station on Seafoam Island. And as he's about to give him a phone call, it is DJ Mary who answers the phone. She wordly informs Tracy that Professor Oak just vanished without a trace, so Tracy and Richie waste no time and head straight to Seafoam Island. They soon reach the TV station, but the guards wouldn't allow them to pass. So Mary assures them that Tracy is Oak's assistant, and Tracy covers for Richie and says that he is Oak's nephew. Mary and Officer Jenny discuss what happened, and according to the security guards, Professor Oak was never seen to have left the building. This does sound fishy, so Best Boy Richie goes on detective mode and straight up commands Mary to tell them everything that happened from the beginning. We then get a flashback on what happened moments before Oak went missing. Oak and Mary were planning to have lunch after the morning rehearsal, but before they were about to head down the elevator, two strange scientists approached them and informed Professor Oak that they've got something rare that might interest him. So Oak told Mary to go on ahead and meet him downstairs after he discusses research stuff with the scientists. And that was the last time Mary had seen Professor Oak. Officer Jenny also adds that there were no scientists spotted entering and exiting the building, but Richie comes up with a very logical hunch. He asks the security guards if a large package had come to the station today. He reasons that what might have happened is that one scientist walked into the building bringing a large package while the other scientist was hiding inside the package. Then, they went on to use the same package to hide Professor Oak when escaping the building. The security guard remembers that someone brought in a stuffed Needle Queen that's said to be a prop for Funniest Home Videos. Tracy and Richie are certain this might be the culprit, and after saying this, the scene immediately turns to the actual culprits, none other than our beloved Team Rocket villains, Cassidy and Chuck.
We get a flashback this time from their perspective. Brooke sneaks Cassidy inside a Nidoqueen costume, which is probably the same costume she used 2 episodes ago. They approach Professor Oak, asking him to check out this strange Pokemon egg that they discovered in the Hoenn region. As Professor Oak was leaning closely to the Pokemon egg, the mechanism instantly sprayed him with sleeping gas. Team Rocket recited their motto, and of course, Oak called Butch the wrong name again just before falling asleep. Afterwards, they dressed Oak in the Nidoqueen costume and left the building. Back to the present, the security guards tell Richie and friends that only 1 person came into the building, but 2 people came out, plus they left with the same Nidoqueen that they brought in. This causes Richie to conclude that they're exactly the culprits. The guard continues by saying that the kidnappers had escaped in a truck with a Pidgeot logo on it, so Richie again commands Jenny to go to a checkpoint in a bridge in Fuchsia City. Going back to Cassidy and Block, it is revealed that they are kidnapping Professor Oak because Professor Namba needs to ask him more information about the Pokerus, which is a Pokemon virus that speeds up the growth of Pokemon. On Richie's end, they are informed that no truck has passed the checkpoint yet, so they conclude that the kidnappers are still in the vicinity. Richie calls in on Rose the Tailo, and he and Tracy point out how he and Ash tend to catch the same kind of Pokemon. He instructs Rose to scour the area for a truck with Pidgeot markings, and Tracy helps by sketching a picture of Pidgeot. Inside an abandoned warehouse, Professor Namba interrogates Oak on telling him where to find Pokerus. Professor Oak of course doesn't want to spill the beans, so they try torturing him by scratching a nail onto a glass. And it's weird because they can somehow hear Professor Oak's words through the earplugs, but not the scratching sound. Rose spots the Pidgeot truck and quickly informs Richie on its whereabouts. Meanwhile, Professor Oak couldn't handle it anymore, so he starts talking, but he's trying to beat around the bush and buy some time, which is the time needed for Richie and the gang to reach the place, as Rose charges straight onto the glass, shattering it. Cassidy and Smooch escape the scene, dragging Professor Oak with them, as Cassidy Sableye holds off the gang. Outside, we get a battle between Tracy and Richie versus Team Rocket. It looks like the protagonists are about to lose until Richie sends out Zippo the Charmeleon. As it's using flamethrower, sparks of fire went on to scorch Professor Oak's head, causing him to run straight into a wall. Cassidy and Prig try to get Professor Oak, but Zippo's flamethrower incinerates them straight into the building. Sparky finishes them off with Thunderbolt, and Cassidy and Blink once again blast off into the sky. This episode ends with Professor Oak rescued once and for all so he can continue on with the TV show. He also offers Richie to stay in his lab for a few weeks so he could help him with his Eevee, as well as get some help from Richie to create a security system for their ranch. Tracy and Richie are also said to be participating in an eating competition, which we never get to see.
The episode begins in Cerulean Gym, where gym leader Misty is just doing her everyday job of feeding her Pokemon. And the first thing that came to our minds was, how does Starmie even eat its foods? Anyways, we then see Psyduck being cute as always as he tries to scuff it like there's no tomorrow, which gives him a different type of headache. Out of nowhere, Daisy arrives from a very hectic day of shopping. She also explains that Violet and Lily are currently busy being beautiful and won't be back till next week. And since Misty now permanently runs the gym, Daisy says that they can finally devote all their time as actress models. In another scene, we see Cassidy and Bleach in a restaurant as they are listening to orders given by Dr. Namba. Their task is to steal a Delcatty of all Pokemon from a young boy in the vicinity of Cerulean City. We then see another character make her appearance in Pokemon Chronicles. It's Casey. She's in Cerulean City to watch the baseball match between the Electabuzz team and the Starmie team, but she doesn't have tickets to enter the stadium. But let's be honest, we all know that the Starmie team is gonna sweep this game. And look, Tracy is here as well. Tracy is here to bring Misty some Pokemon food as per orders of Professor Oak because he wants to... Not long after, Casey arrives at the gym and she has a quick reunion with Misty. She tells her that she's hoping to get some tickets for the baseball game and then starts chanting the Electabuzz theme song. So Misty was like, "Okay, that's enough, say hello to my friend Tracy." Then we get a very similar scene to the Sakura episode where Casey asks Misty if Tracy is her boyfriend. But Misty again denies it, but this time she's blushing. The gang then enters the gym arena since Casey is dying to see how it looks like. And suddenly, a Pelipper comes flying in, delivering a letter. The letter is for Misty, which says,
"Dear Misty, I will wait for you at the lighthouse. Meet me at 2 o'clock and don't be late. Giorgio."
Casey presumes that this person might be one of those trainers that lost to Misty and wants to take revenge on her. So Misty asks Tracy to come with her to the lighthouse to see what this is all about. But Daisy was like, "Oh, Misty, aren't you gonna clean the pool? Cause we're like using it for a photo shoot." So Misty was like, Then why don't you do it yourself, Daisy? But of course, Daisy doesn't want to do it and asks Tracy to clean the pool instead. This leads Casey to offer that she would go with Misty to the lighthouse in place of Tracy. Poor Tracy is obviously hesitant, but he doesn't have any other choice.
Sometimes I wonder if it really does pay to be the nice guy.
So at the lighthouse, Misty and Casey come across a tall, muscular guy whom they think was the one who sent the letter. But it's just a random dude.
Then from a distance we can hear another guy casually saying hello. Casey immediately interrogates him about the letter and scolds him for wanting to take revenge on Misty for a Pokemon battle. But Misty calms Casey down and says that she's never met this guy before. The guy then admits that he was the one who sent Misty the letter because he wants to ask her out on a date, and this frightens Misty. She rejects his offer, but the guy's like, "You're the most beautiful girl in the world." Then Casey teases Misty like, "You're not that type to fall for that mushy stuff, are you?" And Saida comes out of the Pokeball and teases Misty even more. This angers Misty in embarrassment, but Giorgio also reveals that he's got 2 Primo Eat Seat tickets for tonight's Starmie Electabuzz game, which gets Casey super excited. Giorgio then challenges Misty to a battle. He makes a deal that if Misty wins, he'll go away, but if he wins, she comes to him to the ball game. And the more I listen to Giorgio talk, the more I realize that his voice sounds super familiar.
Misty? I've got 2 Primo Eat Seats for tonight's Starmie's Electabuzz game at Cerulean Stadium. I mean, I don't know if you...
So, we've got a little problem here, eh? No sweat. I'd be happy to help you all out. Hey, guys. Nice to meet you.
That's right, Giorgio's English voice actor is also the voice actor of the best boy, Harrison. Anyways, Misty accepts the deal, and they start the battle with Misty sending out Corsola and Giorgio sending out Delcatty. But just as soon as Delcatty is about to attack, something from above snatches it, and of course it's Bleep and Cassidy behind the crime. After reciting their iconic motto, Team Rocket flies away on their paragliders. But Giorgio is quick on his feet and sends out his Pelipper to crash Team Rocket. We initially thought that it was the Gotcha Pelipper that sent Misty the mail, but turns out that it's actually Giorgio's Pelipper. The gang catches up to the now injured Ditch and Cassidy, but they still have enough left in the tank to battle. We again get to see their Mightyena and Sableye, but Casey's Meganium and Missy's Corsola work together to finish off Team Rocket, with Corsola managing to hit the Ghost type with a bunch of tackles, and Meganium body slamming the Mightyena in a similar fashion as to how Bayleaf body slammed Harrison's Houndoom. Finally, Meganium unleashes the Solar Beam and blasts Team Rocket off for the bajillionth time in Pokemon Chronicles. Delcatty is finally saved and resumes its battle with Corsola. Delcatty looks to be in the upper hand for a while, even landing a direct hit with Ice Beam, but we all know how Recover is broken in the anime, and this gives Corsola the energy it needed to finish off Delcatty with Tackle. Misty is declared the winner, which means no day for Giorgio. Casey wastes no time and immediately asks Giorgio to sell him one of the tickets, but Giorgio has a different idea and says that if Casey beats him in a battle, then he's going to give him a ticket. She agrees and sends out her Elekid, while Giorgio uses Delcatty again. It was a super fast battle, but it was Delcatty who emerged victorious. Casey is sad that she's not going to be able to watch the baseball game, but Giorgio gives her the ticket anyway as thanks for helping him save Delcatty from Team Rocket earlier. So basically, Casey ends up being Giorgio's date to the baseball game, and they go inside the stadium chanting the Electabuzz anthem together in a super cute fashion. Back at the gym, Tracy reveals that he's did some minor repairs into the gym, and Daisy says that he's letting Tracy take her out on a date as thanks for the help. Having no date, Misty spends the rest of her night with Togepi as she reflects on her job as a gym leader. She says that it might not be as glamorous as being an actress model, but she enjoys her job nonetheless and further solidifies her dream of becoming the best gym leader she can be. This episode revolves around our protagonist who's aiming to become a Pokemon master alongside his partner Pikachu. No, it's not Ash, this time it's Richie. After walking through a huge forest, Richie and Sparky arrive in Marion Town, which is a bustling city with lots of pollution. Once in the middle of the town, Richie asks an older gentleman who's tending to a lone Celebi shrine about the nearest Pokemon Center. It turns out that this Pokemon Center is actually going to be demolished and relocated to the basement of another building today. The demolition crew is there ready to take down the Pokemon Center on orders of the mayor, and they threaten the nurse droids with their Pokemon. Richie breaks up the fight, and for some reason the crew decides to attack Richie, but he makes quick work of them with Rose and Zippo. After their defeat, the crew runs off to go tell the mayor, and the nurse droids thank Richie for his help. We see that there's a Celebi that is overlooking them from across the street. As thanks for his help, the nurse droids invite Richie to stay the night and give his Pokemon some much deserved Pokemon food. The older nurse droid tells Richie that tomorrow she'll retire and that it's also the 75th anniversary of the Pokemon Center, so that makes her how old exactly? The older droid then shows Richie a picture of an older Marion town and tells him that this is how it looked like before the Pokemon Center opened. She also tells him that Celebi used to live in this town before it became a concrete jungle, and that she met Celebi the day that this center opened. This of course impressed Richie as he knows that Celebi is a rare and legendary Pokemon. In a rare occurrence for the Pokemon anime, Nurse Joy tells us that she had a friend named Nick that actually died on the day of the Pokemon Center opening. It was due to a landslide that hit the town that day, and had he come to her birthday party, things would be different. Richie goes to the guest room and ponders on ways to help the Pokemon Center, and he's completely stuck when Celebi appears in front of him. Celebi guides him towards a drawer in which he finds a carving of Celebi, and then Celebi instantly transports him back in time. In the middle of a forest, Richie hears a cry for help in the distance and gets there just in time to save a Nurse Joy that was falling off a cliff for some reason. Well, it's okay because Richie was there to save the day, but it was kind of odd that she was in that situation anyways. Nurse Joy tells Richie that she was out picking flowers for Celebi and taking it to its shrine that people made long ago.
Once arriving at the shrine together, they run into a kid named Nick, who is helping fix the doors of the shrine. Upon seeing it, Richie instantly recognizes it as a shrine he saw when he first arrived at Mariontown. The three walk together back into town, and there Richie sees the Pokemon Center being built. He is informed that tomorrow the Pokemon Center will be opened and it's Nurse Joy's birthday, so there's a big party to celebrate. Nick invites Richie to stay at his house since he has nowhere to stay, and there he meets Nick's father. Nick's father is putting the final touches on a drawer that will be put in the Pokemon Center, and is the last thing needed for the center to be done. He tells Richie that he likes to put secret compartments in the things that he makes, and drops a truth bomb that Nick has a crush on Lil Nurse Joy. That night, Nick is seen carving the Celebi statue from earlier and admits to Richie that he has feelings for Joy, but he thinks that she wouldn't reciprocate the same feelings. But suddenly, we hear knocking at the door and someone from the town says that Joy is missing. Richie and Nick ignore orders and go look for Joy, who's just knocked out in the middle of the road. Like, this girl needs to evaluate her decisions. Like, seriously, that's twice in one day. So after helping her under a tree, which is probably still dangerous, they notice that a Celebi shrine is on fire, and Nick goes on to put it out because it's the most important thing to Joy. Richie and Joy go to stop Nick because it's getting super dangerous, and at that moment, thunder strikes, but Celebi appears before them and protects them. After being saved, they are all in awe at the sight of Celebi as it flies off. Fast forward to the next day, and everyone is gathered in front of the new Pokemon Center, but Richie notices that Nick isn't there. He rushes to the second floor and opens a drawer, and sure enough, the Celebi statue is right in there, which then triggers a flashback of old Joy telling him about what happened to Nick. With this, Richie faces off on a Ponyta to catch up to Nick and his father, who are leaving town. Richie convinces him to return back to the party and give her the Celebi statue himself, which ultimately saves his life from the landslide that happened just as they turn around. At the party, Nick gives her the statue and everyone around them cheers at the special occasion. Poor Richie can't stay for the festivities as he gets teleported back into the present time by Celebi right away. The first thing he sees is a demolition crew from earlier, so he quickly goes to stop them, but instead, he is stopped by the mayor of this town, Nick. The episode then ends with Celebi making another appearance over the town, showing that it still actively watches over Mariontown closely.
The episode begins with Team Rocket in the middle of a blast-off, and it's really nice to be able to see this side of things for once. Jesse tells James to activate the portable flotation device, and while rummaging through his pockets, his vintage bottle cap collection comes flying out, with one of them getting stuck on Meowth's face. It ends up being a Team Rocket bottle cap that they received during their training days, and cut back to a flashback of their training days. Jesse's task was to retrieve a big Articuno statue, but she and her partner failed to do it successfully, and with that, Jesse's partner dead. We then get to see their trainer Drill Sergeant Viper, who has a total badass name. He informs us that this is Jesse's 10th partner that she has failed with, and we get confirmed that he's not dead. Sad. We get an appearance from Giovanni, with Viper telling him that Cassidy and her partner are both getting high marks, and all of their training and working well as a team is going well. A complete 180 from another trainee, Jesse. While Giovanni wants to drop her, Viper says that she still has potential and wants to give her another final chance. As that happens, the talking Meowth barges into the room, and no one is surprised that it can talk. Meowth says that it's a lifelong dream to become a Team Rocket agent. We cut to see a rare Jessie with no lipstick, and a rival Cassidy being absolute savages on the treadmill. In the locker room, their bickering continues, with Cassidy telling Jessie that no one's ever going to want to be her partner. And while Jessie says it's fine, you can tell that deep down she kind of wants to have a partner to call her own. Back at Giovanni's office, Meowth is scarfing down some food while reciting the Team Rocket rules. Viper tells Jessie that he found a new partner for her, and we get introduced to James, who enters the super iconic line.
No one's carried me since my mama.
And instantly the pair have a good connection. You know what other pair has a powerful connection? The Pichu Bros. And with amazing merch like this, you're going to want to check out the link in the description and take a look for yourself. Their first training together goes quite well, with Jessie understanding that James isn't like her past partners. We then see Giovanni completely fed up with Meowth's antics and wants whatever is deemed necessary to get removed from the premise. Viper has the idea to team him up with Jesse and James. They are the first two to seem to even care that Meowth can talk, but immediately they are assigned their first challenge.
In this challenge, they are tasked to go to a predetermined location within 24 hours, going by any means necessary. Each of them is given a loaf of bread and a bottle of water to last them the day, but Meowth immediately eats his share. They then get to a river that Meowth can cross, so James puts him on his head and helps him cross. Meowth continues to be a burden on the team by being too tired and hungry to march on. But James continues to be a true friend and gives him his portion of bread and water. And of course is keeping the bottle cap since he's collecting them. That night, Jessie decides to share her bread with both Meowth and James, showing that the pair has grown on her. Jessie and James had a heart-to-heart talk and really grew on each other. It was then that they decided to make an agreement to not leave each other no matter what. As long as the trio sticks together forever, they'll be the greatest team in Team Rocket history. On the next day, they are met with the next obstacle in their way, a wooden bridge. Meowth is again too scared to cross, but remembering their promise, James makes sure to motivate him. Jessie took charge and successfully crosses the bridge, but when it's James's turn, the bridge breaks with Meowth on his head. So James tosses Meowth over to Jessie. But upon seeing how much pain Meowth is in when holding onto his tail, James sacrifices himself so that Jessie and Meowth can move on. James is left hospitalized and completely surrounded in a cast, so he can't do anything. But now it's time for the final test, and Viper briefs Jessie, Brad, and Cassidy on their final mission. And outside the building, James appears saying that he would never let his team down, and the mission continues as if nothing happened. After a montage of both teams making their way up the building, they both arrive at the room with the red Snorlax at the same time. Bob and Cassidy beeline for the red Snorlax, but fall through the floor by stepping on a trap. Meowth and James then follow suit and run towards it, falling for the same trick. But Jessie carries the team on her back and pulls them both out, this time refusing to let James fall down. One out-of-context picture later, and they got to the red Snorlax, and as they're pulling it out of the building, the time runs out. Viper announces that even though they failed the mission, they worked so well as a team that Jessie, James, and Meowth have become Team Rocket agents. It's another peaceful morning in Pallet Town, the sun is shining, the sky is blue, and the Pokémon are happy. But all things change when Kingler is hypnotized by the moving tales of Meryl. This then causes a chain reaction of disasters as Kingler accidentally pinches Phanpy, then Phanpy hits Totodile with Rollout. So this disturbs Snorlax into falling off a hill and straight onto Cyndaquil, triggering Cyndaquil to use Flamethrower, which angers all 30 of Ash's Tauros. In Oak's lab, Tracy reminds Oak to never skip his meal and that a new trainer is coming to the lab to pick up his starter Pokemon today. The English dub even says that the kid is a mayor's son, but this is not the case in the original Japanese dub. Coincidentally, the doorbell rings, and it's Delia and Mr. Mime who are here to bring the herbs requested by Professor Oak. But we all know why Delia's here, duh. So after Tracy spends some quality time with Muk, we see Professor Oak performing his final checks on the starter Pokemon. But as soon as they are happily discussing how the Pokemon are healthy, the horde of Tauros charge straight inside the laboratory, causing the little Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle to escape. And conveniently, the mayor's son arrives, who goes by the name Gilbert. And let's just say that he's not the nicest, nor the most respectful, nor the most lovable kid you'll encounter. A typical spoiled brat, this entitled Gilbert says that he would prefer having a Torchic as his starter Pokemon, saying that Kanto starters are lame. So Tracy gives him a lecture, then Professor Oak even adds that the 3 starter Pokemon are missing. So this causes Gilbert to gloat in joy and decides to settle on a Pikachu instead, saying that he heard about a kid from Pallet Town who started with a Pikachu and has become successful in Pokemon Leagues. So this makes Delia happy hearing good news about his son, but she tells him that Ash's case of choosing Pikachu was a special case. And Gilbert is like, But I'm special too, I'm the mayor's son. Then he contemplates on choosing a Raichu instead because that way he won't be needing to raise and evolve his Pokemon. So this annoys Tracy greatly and he starts yelling at Gilbert about the true essence of being a Pokemon trainer. Professor Oak calms him down and decides to split up into 2 teams to find a starter Pokemon. Outside, Professor Oak and Gilbert meet an old woman named Masae. Professor Oak tells her how the starter Pokemon ran away and then requests her not to tell anyone about it. And she tells everyone about it.
Yo, what's up, my peppy Palatown peeps? The latest word from the street is that baby Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander said see ya to the Oak Lab and took off. And the mayor's son was supposed to pick one of these to be his Pokemon today.
The scene changes to Tracy, Delia, and Mr. Mime as they find Charmander playing with a Magikarp's fin, but the little guy is about to fall into the water. Tracy quickly runs across the water and picks up the struggling Charmander, but then he stumbles as he walks back, so Delia instructs Mr. Mime to use Psychic and bring them back to safety. Like, why didn't you do that in the first place? Why wait for Tracy to get drenched and Charmander potentially risk its life? Anyways, back to Professor Oak, Gilbert, and Ash's Bulbasaur, and they are searching for the Pokemon in the mountains. Gilbert is obviously a scaredy cat and is slowing everyone down. Professor Oak even tells him that he's going to face far scarier places when he becomes a Pokemon trainer, and savagely gives him the option to call it quits and go home. But then they hear a loud cry from up in the tree, and it's Squirtle. Squirtle's about to fall, but Gilbert is actually the one who ends up falling first. Lucky for him, the good boy Bulbasaur is there to save him. After Gilbert is saved, Squirtle's just there like, hello, have you forgotten about me? Squirtle also falls off, but Professor Oak catches it and Bulbasaur saves him again with his Vine Whip. Falling down the cliff must have been a traumatic experience for poor Squirtle as it doesn't come outside of its shell. Bulbasaur tries to cheer it up, but to no avail. After reflecting on his experiences today and the lectures given by Professor Oak, Gilbert steps up and tries to make a funny face in front of Squirtle. This actually works out perfectly as Squirtle comes out of its shell and starts playing with Gilbert. The gang meets up and concludes that Bulbasaur is the only one left to be found until Masaya calls for Professor Oak from the radio, saying that there have been reports on Bulbasaur sightings everywhere, including in her vegetable section. A phone then rings that someone found Bulbasaur getting chased by a group of wild Mankey. They go to the specified location and realize that it's actually a group of dangerous Primeape and not Mankey that's chasing after Bulbasaur. Professor Oak tries to distract the Primeape while Mr. Mime grabs Bulbasaur from up on the tree with its Psychic. But then Gilbert, being the troublesome kid that he is, inhales some leaves and sneezes so loudly causing Mr. Mime to lose its concentration. Bulbasaur falls straight onto Primeape's head, triggering the entire group to attack. While running away, Gilbert and little Bulbasaur are separated from the rest of the group. As the Primeape thrashes straight onto them, Gilbert decides to protect Bulbasaur and physically take on the Primeape himself. But Ash's Bulbasaur saves the day and brings Gilbert and little Bulbasaur to the other mountain. Bulbasaur unleashes a powerful solar beam, scaring the Primeape away. We then get the scene of little Bulbasaur showing its affection towards Gilbert, and the boy has decided to pick Bulbasaur as his starter Pokemon. The episode ends with Gilbert thanking Professor Oak and Bulbasaur for everything as he begins his journey from the beginning. This episode begins with Professor Oak contemplating what souvenir to buy for Ash's mom. Yeah, they couldn't even say her name. I guess she deserves a souvenir after. In an excellent nod to continuity, Gary is researching on an island and Professor Oak and Tracy are going to the island. They're going because Gary had told them that there's something that he wanted to show them urgently. While waiting at the docks, a man named Jared comes to pick them up on a speedboat and transports them to the island that Gary is at. As they take off, we get a look at Cassidy and Butcher as they stare at the boat, saying that they are probably going to where Professor Nama asked them to go and take something. On the way to the island, Tracy and Oak spot a bunch of Seeking, and Tracy does a quick sketch. In a double-only edit, Oak mentions that he used to own a Seeking, but again, this isn't mentioned in the Japanese version. After arriving at the island, Professor Oak, Tracy, and Jared walk towards the lab when suddenly an Aerodactyl appears in front of them. As soon as the Aerodactyl flies away, we see Gary running towards the Aerodactyl, complaining that it got away again. After a quick reunion with his grandpa, everyone heads back to the lab together. We also get shown that Brad and Cassidy have also arrived on the island. Gary tells Professor Oak that he found the old Amber back when he was on his journey, and that's how they managed to revive Aerodactyl. The problem is that when it got revived, it got scared and destroyed everything and ran away. Crystal, who's the little sister of the unimportant lead scientist Dora, makes her appearance and she's a sassy little girl. However, it was her that found the Aerodactyl egg that was also ultimately used to revive the Aerodactyl. With Oak being worried that it could run away and cause havoc in other places, he warns that they need to go find it and fast. Crystal then uses her Pokepowers around the islands to be on the lookout for said Aerodactyl. When scouting for the Aerodactyl, Blip and Cassidy end up facing it head first before being gusted away. After all of this trouble, Gary begins doubting himself, And we get a whole scene of Oak and Tracy comforting Gary and telling him that this is just a new journey of being a researcher and it's just only begun. And they also mention that what happens along the journey is ultimately more important than the destination itself.
A Farfetch'd then informs the trio that it spotted Aerodactyl, and upon following the bird, they end up on the only mountain on the entire island. They spot a sleeping Aerodactyl and decide to sneak up on it. And Crystal falls, alerting the Aerodactyl. It flies away, but Tracy feels his inner Ash Ketchum and hangs on to Aerodactyl as it flies away. After getting closer to the ground, Tracy dead. Well, no, he's fine, but Aerodactyl gets captured by a net, and it was none other than Bucks and Cassidy. They quickly get defeated by Gary's Umbreon and Crystal's Ivysaur, who basically just use Tackle and Quick Attacks to win, before blasting him off with Solar Beam. As Team Rocket blasts off, we see that Aerodactyl uses Hyper Beam, and Team Rocket dead. Aerodactyl escapes, and Gary theorizes that maybe the new Aerodactyl is actually scared of humans, since it's brand new to the world. He thinks that if they can feed it, then they can gain its trust, so they go and make a plan to find its favorite food. Once finding out that it likes what looks like pear, they head to where Crystal has seen them before. Sure enough, Aerodactyl is munching away when Team Rocket appears and they successfully capture the Aerodactyl. This time, Gary sends out Dodrio, which easily handles the Team Rocket duo, and once again they get hyper beamed out of existence. In order to gain its trust, they fight it again eating the fruit, and this time Gary approaches the Pokemon and it finally trusts them after seeing all of the Pokemon surrounding him and Crystal vouching for the trainers. Now that it's all over, Dora offers Gary a full-time job there and Crystal is found with the Aerodactyl. Tracy gives Crystal a sketch of her Ivysaur and leaves alongside Professor Oak. And while they're riding the boat, the group of Lapras see them out, and they reflect on how good of a Pokemon researcher Gary has become. The episode begins with a very similar scene as A Date with Delcatty, where Boink and Cassidy are in a restaurant planning for their next heist. Dr. Namba instructs them to steal a Luvdisc in the Cerulean City gym in order to eliminate love from the world. A super fairy tale-y reason to capture a Pokemon, obviously something only the English dub can think of. The next morning, the narrator begins by saying,
"Here we are at the Cerulean Gym, where love is in the air."
But in the Japanese dub, it was actually Tracy who was narrating that Daisy phoned him to go to the gym. And for the third time in Pokemon Chronicles, we again get the scene of Misty meeting up with Tracy at the gym's lobby, but this time she's in her advanced generation clothes. They look super cool on her, but you know what's even cooler than Misty's new clothes? The Pichu Bros merchandise! It's time to amp up your coolness level by purchasing one of these babies. All our shirts, hoodies, and mugs come in a wide variety of colors, so what are you waiting for? The link is in the description below. Not long after, the delightful Daisy shows up and excitedly shows Tracy their new Pokemon, Luvdisc. His name is Kasserin. Misty and Daisy then say that there's another Luvdisc in the pool, whose name is Lovren. Kasserin is in love with Lovren, but she is the shy type and often hides from him. But love knows no bounds, as Kasserin has the ability to act as a compass needle to point to the direction where Lovren is hiding. Kasserin eventually finds his love, but Lovren plays hard to get and rejects him without remorse. This causes Daisy to freak out, because if Kasserin and Lovren won't be lovey-dovey, then they wouldn't be able to perform their underwater spectacular. So Misty and Tracy are curious what this underwater spectacular is all about, so Daisy starts explaining. In her imagination, Misty and Tracy play the roles of Magical Mermaid and the Handsome Prince, and using the power of love between Kasserin and Lovren, the Magical Mermaid and the Handsome Prince fall in love. That's another win for the Orange Shippers. However, Misty and Tracy adamantly refuse to perform in their show because of their many responsibilities. Out of nowhere, Psyduck comes out of its Pokeball and tries to help Kasserin get along with Lovren, but he fails.
Soon, a machine captures Lovren, and it's none other than Buffy and Cassidy that's behind this mess. Sableye creates a massive smokescreen using Shadow Ball, allowing them to escape in their flying car, bringing Lovren with them. Tracy comes up with the idea to use Cameron's compass ability to find Lovren, as Missy encourages the little guy to do his best to save the one he truly loves. Kasserin eventually finds Lovren's location, but before that, Daisy needs to do something first.
about?
It's the character from her movie. She's a real method actress.
Let's put this baby in high gear.
Daisy eventually catches up to Blurred and Cassidy, but thinking she's in a race, she passes ahead of them instead of stopping next to them. Turns out Belch and Cassidy's flying car also knows its way around the water, so off they go. Good thing Daisy comes prepared and brought an inflatable boat, which Tracy single-handedly inflates. Catherine sends his lover inside the cave, so the gang decides to go check it out. But being the competent villains that they are, Cassidy and Brock set up a trap to manage to swipe Catherine as well. They show themselves to Misty, Tracy, and Daisy, which opens the only door for the gang to escape. When they leave, Misty instructs Catherine to use Tackle to break the cage, and to do it for the sake of Leverin. After multiple attempts, Catherine finally smashes the cage bars. Next, Misty calls Catherine to break through the window with Water Gun. After doing so, Leverin finally decides to help and use Ice Beam to create a frozen arc for the pair to escape. Unfortunately, Cassidy and Hutch arrive.
No, it's Cassidy and Hutch.
The name is Blood.
Catherine distracts Team Rocket with Double Team, which gives them the chance to escape, but Cassidy and Burr catch up to them at the edge of a cliff. And what happens next is the most ridiculous thing that I've seen in Pokemon Chronicles. Back to Tracy and his friends, he somehow manages to grab hold of Team Rocket's controller, so he uses it to break out of their prison. Cassidy and Bark still find a way to trap Catherine and Leverin, but Misty arrives just in time to command both Luvdisc to use agility to escape from the nets. Misty and Daisy work together to stop Team Rocket, even creating a fun contest combination of Shadow Ice. Leverin's Sweet Kiss causes Mightyana's Hyper Beam to attack his own team, and the pair of Leverin finish everything off with Water Gun. This episode ends in Cerulean Aquarium, where Violet and Lily were ultimately chosen to play the roles of the Magical Mermaid and the Handsome Prince. One more ridiculous butterfly flop of Catherine and Leverin, and Misty and Tracy happily help in taking pictures during the after show. The episode begins in the middle of a baseball game between the Electabuzz and the Starmie. It's a close game, but the Electabuzz are just one strike away from ending their 10-game losing streak. We see Casey in the stands as the announcer tells us that their star player Corey DeMario isn't there. Had he been there, it wouldn't even be close. The player throws the pitch and they lose. After 10 losses in a row, Casey now too wonders where Corey is. As Casey sits on the park pondering about the Electabuzz, we hear a commotion, and it's a Charizard running away from its trainers. Casey commands her Pokemon to stop the rampaging Charizard, but they get one shot, so maybe this Charizard is actually extremely powerful. The trainer saves Corey in a shot that looks like I shouldn't be allowed to show you. The Charizard gets his head stuck in the playground equipment, reminiscent of when Ash's Charizard got his head stuck in a Pikachu short. Anyways, the trainer ends up being Corey DeMario himself, and Casey is starstruck. Charizard takes his head out of the tunnel, and upon seeing Casey's Pokemon, he immediately puts his head back in. Turns out that this Charizard is a pacifist and he doesn't like fighting. Casey has the idea to pump it up with an Electabuzz chant, and after doing her thing, it's now Charizard's time to shine. It goes for Flamethrower, and only a small bit of smoke comes out. Corey invites Casey to lunch at his dad's ranch, and upon getting there, she sees the world's second biggest Electabuzz fan, his dad. Corey's dad reveals to Casey that the injury that took him away from the game isn't the reason that he isn't returning anymore. It's actually because he doesn't have the confidence. Casey takes it upon herself to reignite his spirit. Casey does what she does best and starts a chant with Dawn the Charizard, Corey, and his little brother Benny. After getting into the cheerleading spirit, it seems that they finally got to Charizard and he's now able to fly, but he fails. Second time's the charm, not for this guy. This then triggers Corey's flashback of returning from injury, but his team still telling him that he isn't good enough to come back, drawing a direct parallel to what's currently going on with Dawn.
Casey's next big idea is for Dawn to go straight into a battle, and the opponent is Corey's dad, who, showing off his Electabuzz spirit, is using an Ampharos. In typical Pokemon Chronicles fashion, what does an electric-type Pokemon use against a part flying-type Charizard? Tackle! So Casey then commands Dawn to use Flamethrower, but again, nothing comes out. Ampharos goes for a Thunder Punch, and with one hit, Dawn refuses to fight anymore. Casey then begins to badmouth Dawn, calling it past its prime, which causes Benny to courageously defend his Pokemon. The past its prime comment got to Corey, perhaps feeling the same way, and he also lashes out on Casey. Using reverse psychology, Casey tricks Corey into going out and training Charizard by himself with the hopes that he also finds his way back into the baseball spirit. It turns out that Corey's dad was in on it from the beginning, and this is what they planned from the battle. Corey and Dawn start by running up the mountains to get to the place where it flied for the first time. Corey tries his best to echo his words of encouragement to Dawn, but Dawn immediately falls down, barely hanging onto a branch. Cory goes to save him, but he also falls and lands even further down. After being gone for a few hours, Cory's dad, Casey, and Benny all set out to look for him. Casey's Beedrill eventually leads her to where Cory and Dawn are stranded. Cory reveals that the reason Dawn is so scared of water is because when it was a little Charmander, it fell into the water and has been scared ever since. As Casey is stubbornly climbing down to go save them, miraculously a storm spawns which causes her to fall. This leads Cory to throw a rope to save her, just like the old baseball times. Cory saves her in yet another scene that shouldn't be shown. And as they're climbing up, the rain gets heavier to the point that it causes them to slip and fall. They plummet down the water, and that was just the motivation Dawn needed to fly down and rescue them. In an emotional scene, we get to see Cory, Casey, and Dawn flying in the sky together. More awkward scenes later, and we see that Cory made it back into the mound, and his fighting spirit is as hot as ever. The episode begins with Richie and Sparky sailing on board the SS Anne until a horde of Gyarados appear in the middle of the sea. The passengers are panicking and the ship crew decides to take a detour to avoid the Gyarados. But out of nowhere, a strange man calls his Salamence to use Hyper Beam on the Gyarados, causing them to flee in fright. Richie is amazed with how this man easily scared those Gyarados, but the man says that those Gyarados are nothing compared to the Pokemon that he's about to face, which is Moltres. The man's name is Silver, and he likes to refer to Richie as Kid, Half Pint, or Short Stack. Suddenly, two very unsuspicious people approach Silver, and they're said to be doctors from the bogus fake Institute of Science. It turns out that Silver is working with them on something, but they're hiding about it. The ship stops by an active volcano, which is actually Mount Ember in the Japanese dub, and Richie notices that Silver and the two doctors have deboarded the ship. And now the ship is about to sail again, and what does Richie do? He recklessly hops off the ship like a mad lad. Richie catches up to them and insists on wanting to go with their Moltres expedition, but the doctors just deny it, saying that they're just there to study some rocks. Silver just laughs it off, knowing that Richie is never buying that lie. So this leaves the doctors no choice but to start explaining their real reason for being here. Based on their study, Moltres will appear on the island tomorrow, so they're trying to use the energy from Moltres' fire as a power source. And with the help of Silver battling Moltres, they may be able to get some of its fire. So Richie really wants to go with them to see Moltres, but they still reject him, saying that they don't want a kid tagging along with them. Nighttime comes, and Richie is still walking around the volcano looking for a place to stay, until he suddenly hears the voice of the female doctor. He starts eavesdropping on the doctors, and they seem to be talking to someone on the radio. Unfortunately for Richie, he steps on a piece of wood, catching the attention of the doctors, but he quickly hides from them. So the doctors continue talking on the radio until Silver comes in. They head back to their camp, and Silver heads on to find Richie hanging on a cliff, as if he exactly knows that he's there. Richie couldn't hold on any longer and falls, but luckily Silver Chikorita is strong enough to save them.
Richie wastes no time and tells Silver that those doctors are suspicious and that he shouldn't trust them. But then Silver just brushes it off like he doesn't care and says that battling Moltres is all that matters, and then proceeds to invite Richie to their camp. They have a good late night chat by the fire, and Silver says that Richie reminds him of himself when he was a kid, being reckless at all. Then Richie says that he can't help but get excited about things. He then mentions that he has a friend who's just like this, a Pokemon trainer named Ash. Silver reveals that he once got a glimpse of Moltres when he was young, and since then finding and battling Moltres has been his ultimate dream in life. The next day arrives and Richie, Silver, and the two doctors climb to the top of the volcano, and it looks like it's about to erupt. Not long after, Moltres appears, so Silver immediately sends out his Salamence to battle it. But it looks like Moltres' flame isn't as strong as usual, and the doctors confirm that since it's Moltres' last stop in its flight pattern, it comes to this volcano when it's at its weakest. The idea of this causes Silver to lose interest, saying that he doesn't want to battle Moltres when it's weak. This leaves the doctors no choice but to battle Moltres themselves. They send out Tentacool and Cloyster and then capture Moltres with their electromagnetic net. This maddens Silver and instructs Salamence to destroy the net. This time the doctors immobilize Salamence, Silver, and Richie with their net, and they finally reveal who they really are. It's Cassidy and Biff.
From Team Rocket, I should have known!
Cassidy and Biff!
I just told you it's Butch, weren't you listening to my intro?
Cassidy and Boing capture Moltres again, but Silver, Richie, and Salamence find a way to break free from their nets. Sparky attacks them with Thunderbolt and blasts Team Rocket off again. Moltres falls into the volcano, but Salamence is too late to save it. They are worried whether or not Moltres can survive the molten lava, but little do they know that the magma from the volcano actually restores Moltres' energy. Moltres rises from the magma like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Richie realizes that Moltres comes here whenever it's weak in order to regain its power. Now that Moltres is alive and kicking, Silver challenges it to a battle. First they show us a clash between Flamethrower and Hyper Beam, but Flamethrower overpowers it, dealing some damage to Salamence. Salamence then uses Double Team to confuse Moltres, and follows up with a Dragon Breath, and we see this amazing sight of Dragon Breath turning into the shape of Moltres. But just as it happens, the ground starts shaking, signaling the volcano is about to erupt. A large rock shoots to where Richie and Silver are standing, but luckily Moltres is there just in time to save them, meeting the rock with Flamethrower. Salamence brings them out to safety, and Moltres flies into the clouds. In the end, Silver decides to stay in the volcano to train while waiting for Moltres' return. He finally calls Richie by his name, and Richie boards the ship into the sunset. The episode begins with Meowth saying that he's on the last 2 days of his vacation and sitting in a park by himself trying to enjoy his sandwich. A tuna fish sandwich? What Pokemon is that? After plating a sandwich, enjoying a drink, and imagining his golden statue being somewhere in the park, Meowth goes to eat a sandwich, only for him to bite into his hand. After searching for a sandwich desperately, he oddly finds it floating in the air in front of him. He makes a break chasing a sandwich, but it's too fast for him to catch up to. In the meantime, we see the best bros in the Pokemon series, the Pichu Bros. The Pichu Bros are so cool, in fact, that we have merch based off of their characters, which you should totally check out. We have different items in a bunch of different colors, so if that fancies you, then click the link down below and take a look for yourself. Anyways, the Pichu Bros, being the best boys that they are, decide to go and help Meowth to get his sandwich back. In the meantime, Azumarill was planning a party for Azurill, which looks really nice, before Meowth comes running in and messes everything up. Wooper, Smoochum, and Magby also join into the chase and help get the literal fast food. Teddy Ursa is minding its business when the mysterious sandwich falls into his mouth and it gets a big old bite. Teddy Ursa's reaction when being shaken by Meowth is precious, and at the same time, the Detective Pikachus notice that there's a footprint on the ground. The Pichu Bros come up with the fact that there was an invisible Pokemon that was the one who was carrying Meowth's sandwich. As they're huddled and thinking of a plan, they notice a red stripe floating, and the Pichu Bros posse begins their chase. The invisible Pokemon leads them to an artsy area with a bunch of Kecleon stripes that were made by Smeargle. With the invisible Pokemon well camouflaged, Pichu Bros come up with an idea to have Smeargle splatter paint all over the area, which gets on the Pokemon, and they are now able to see it better. The Kecleon realizes that it's clearly visible now and gives a really wholesome reaction and runs off. It then leads into where Azurill is, and it turns out that it was just stealing food to give it to the baby Pokemon. Azurill was taken to the party where he was happy to reunite with Azumarill, and Kecleon explains how he met Azurill in a super wholesome and endearing story. Azumarill then thanks Kecleon and invites everyone to the party, and we get a wholesome scene of them enjoying lunch at the picnic. Look at the Pichu Bros, my heart honestly just melted here.
The second half of the episode is an entirely different short, but it picks up right after the picnic with Azumarill. Azumarill was setting up another feast for everyone to enjoy, and the Pichu Bros were giving company to Azurill by watching over it and playing together. Pichu Lil gets greedy and goes to eat some food by sneaking up to the table, but the ever-reliable Pichu Big stops him from doing so. So during this interaction, Azurill is gone from their eyesight. On the other side of the town, Meowth is roaming the streets, feeling defeated and lost when he stumbles across a Skitty, and he is instantly madly in love. Meowth tries flirting with the Skitty, but comes up short and decides to come up with a plan to win her over. At the same time, the Pichu Bros are calling for their posse to go help them find the missing Azurill. Soon they find Azurill dangerously crossing the streets and almost getting hit by trucks. We then get the scene of the posse raising their hands while crossing the streets, which we think is a cute scene. Because you see, children in Japan are taught to raise their hands while crossing the streets, so they would be more noticeable to vehicle drivers. The fun doesn't stop there, because next, the Pichu posse, one by one, hop on poor little Wooper's head, which I think was hilarious. And then Azurill even managed to jump on a fair alligator to cross the river. Update on Meowth, now he steals these roses from a dress shop to give to Skitty. As he climbs the ladder to give her the bouquet of flowers, Azurill is now here as well and starts spraying its tail to gather some of the clothes hanging on the clothesline. So by the time Meowth hands over the roses to Skitty, Azurill already replaced them with a ball of laundry. This angers Skitty, causing her to use Fury Swipes on Meowth, a move it can't legitimately learn in the games. Meowth doesn't give up and gets Skitty a cake. Of course, Azurill eats it before it catches the eyes of Skitty, so this happens. Flowers and cakes didn't work, so Meowth grabs a guitar and starts singing her a love song. At first, this catches Skitty's attention and she seems to like it. But then, Azurill starts jamming to the music, which makes Meowth super irritated, causing him to smash the guitar into Azurill. But it was Skitty who was hit instead. That was a final straw for Skitty as she cancels Meowth for good. Now, Meowth is as infuriated as ever and begins to chase after Azuriel. Azuriel finds itself in a precarious spot, almost falling off a cliff. As Meowth charges in to catch it, Whooper fires off a water gun, blasting Meowth away. Azuriel starts falling into the ground, but fortunately, the Pichu posse is there to save it. The episode ends with Meowth taking a nap so that he will be well rested for his upcoming return to Team Rocket. Big Town is the capital of business, theater, fashion, and art. With its towering buildings, double-decker buses, it's one of the busiest towns out there. But there's another side of Big Town that is less busy, less fancy, and less famous. But that is actually where true enjoyment can be found, because here reside the Pichu Posse. It's another fun day of playtime for the Pichu brothers. They start playing with their own wooden seesaw and summon the gang with their loud and cute voices. Smoochum, Magby, Whooper, and Teddy Ursa all hear the call and hop on the seesaw. But as soon as Teddy Ursa joins in, its weight causes a Whooper to fly and slide along a pipe. The slide was so fun that the entire posse also wanted to try it out. So, one by one, they queue in line, but Pichu Lil wants to be the first and sneaks in front. So his big brother scolds him and tells him that he should probably fall in line at the back. As they're going back, Pichu Lil accidentally slips and falls and gets angry at Pichu Big. Their fight starts heating up as Magby tries to stop them. And then Pichu Lil pushes Magby off the pipe, maddening Magby, but good thing Whooper is able to stop Magby from firing off a flamethrower. The Pichu brothers got to their breaking point that they both let out a thundershock, jolting everyone, including themselves. Both brothers faint, but Pichu Lil slides down the pipe and onto a random skateboard and rolls away from the playground. Whooper, the only one who wasn't electrocuted, follows him with a very convenient roller skates, making their way across the dangerous roads with all the fast-moving cars. Fortunately, Azumarill notices them and propels them with water gun, barely avoiding getting hit by a truck. So now, Pichu Lil wakes up from his unconsciousness and is still mad at his big brother. Speaking of Pichu Big, he begins worrying about his little brother and gathers the posse to look for him. Ooh, check this out, it's a Pichu Bros merchandise! We sell quality shirts, mugs, and hoodies for the cheapest price you'll find on the internet. And while you're at it, join our Pichu Bros Posse Discord server, the best place to talk about all things Pokemon. Anyways, Pichu Lil and Whooper walk along the streets and find a bundle of balloons being sold by a man who's sleeping right now. Being the mischievous cutie that he is, Pichu Lil unties the balloons but fails to realize that it's gonna make him fly into the sky. The posse starts their search for Pichu Lil, asks Azumarill for directions, but Teddy Ursa is distracted by these nuts that he found along the way.
So now it's only Pichu Big, Smoochum, and Magmy. For a second, Pichu Little flies above them, but when they turn around, they just see Murkrow instead. After a short while, Smoochum notices Pichu Little with the balloons, and a sudden gust of wind blows Pichu Little towards them. But he instead hits buckets of paints, causing it to spill everywhere, including this Houndour who's peacefully taking a nap. Of course, Houndour got super annoyed and chases the elemental trio around the town. That is until they reach the river and all together they fall into the water. The four of them are struggling to stay afloat, but luckily Feraligatr is there to save them. Fun fact, this is actually Feraligatr's debut in the Pokemon anime because this episode aired during the Johto Championship season. Feraligatr swims for a bit until he launches all of them away with its tail. The posse lands on a grassy area, but poor Houndour lands onto where Snorlax is resting, so yeah, he got squished. Pichu Little is still flying with the balloons and comes across a Murkrow who playfully pops all the balloons one by one. As Teddy Ursa stashes away his food, he hears Pichu's cry as he slowly descends after Murkrow pops almost all of the balloons. Teddy Ursa luckily finds Whooper, grabs it, and commands it to use Water Gun just in time for when Murkrow pops to find a balloon. This softens Pichu's landing, but it's only a matter of time until Whooper runs out of water, but everything turns out fine for the three of them. Pichu Little, Whooper, and Teddy Ursa head back home, but meeting there are Magby, Smoochum, and Pichu Big, and the Pichu Bros get into another argument. Magby calls to Azumarill to help them stop the fight between the brothers, but as soon as she arrives, she gets hit by their Thundershock. Azumarill is now fuming with anger and fires off multiple water guns everywhere. It eventually douses Smoochum's hair, and she's not happy with it at all, so she uses a bunch of powder snows, freezing the water guns fired by Azumarill. A debris of ice then falls onto Magby's head, angering him as well, and he also joins in on the fun by blasting his flamethrowers. It was a big mess for like a minute there until Azumarill, Smoochum, and Magby use up all of their energy. It is then that they realize that they accidentally created this fun and beautiful icy slide, and everyone is enamored by the sight of it. Like in the beginning, the posse fall in line, but Pichu Little again wants to be in front. Pichu Big again tells him to go with him in the back, and this time he listens and everyone is happy. The Pichu posse one by one slide their way down the ice, and we see one of the funnest closing scenes in any Pokemon episode ever. The episode begins with Meowth telling us about how in the city there are Pokemon who are good, who are saps, and like stupid things like playdates. It's because they haven't heard of Meowth's golden rule: trust no one and look out only after yourself. Azrael has gathered acorns for the Pichu Bros posse, and as Teddiursa runs over, it trips and causes a domino effect that knocks the acorns over. The acorns roll off a hill and are run over by cars, crushing them in the process, and as well as crushing the dreams of the Pichu Bros posse. Meowth says that there are no losers on his team because he's the only member in it. Meowth is excited because he got a couple of days off from Team Rocket, so he's going to invest his time into his side hustle, which is to build a giant golden statue of himself. His split personalities then serve him up a sandwich, which he takes with him on a walk for the day. As Meowth stumbles across a place that would be perfect for his monument, Teddiursa comes in having smelled the sandwich. Meowth sends Teddiursa away and is there feeling proud about how he handled the situation when Smoochum accidentally bumps into him, causing them both to fall. They were both holding identical baskets, so Smoochum of course walks away with the one that ended up being Meowth's. As soon as Meowth found out, he furiously chased after Smoochum. She runs through a hole in the wall and Meowth is unable to duck in time, which knocks him out and he sees Torchic. Smoochum then goes to the playground to tell the Pichu Bros posse. As Smoochum is explaining the situation, Meowth catches up and so Smoochum throws a basket to Pichu Big, who climbs with the slide. Meowth catches up to him, so he throws it to Magby, who runs off with it. Magby ends up tossing it back to Pichu Little in an NFL style pass, but as Pichu Little gets cornered, Wooper tries to use Water Gun on Meowth. The shot misses and hits the basket, which goes flying away, but eventually Meowth does get to it. After picking it up and walking only a few steps, he accidentally steps on Houndour's head, angering the dog Pokemon. Houndour chases after Meowth, and in the process Meowth drops the basket once again. Teddiursa is staring inside the window of a cake shop when he gets blessed with the basket hitting the back of his head. Meowth and Houndour's chase ends with Meowth injured, but he still stands up as soon as he sees Teddiursa walking by with his basket. Meowth opens the basket and realizes that Teddiursa already ate it. Instead of being angry, Meowth just gives up. We then get this transition which seems extremely low budget even for Pokemon. Meowth is walking through the street when he realizes he's gonna need money to build the golden statue. He finds a job as a pizza delivery boy and tries to convince the Pichu Bros posse to do the deliveries for him. Meowth tells him that if they deliver the pizza, then he's gonna buy them a box too.
Pichu Big steps up and encourages the posse to help out Meowth so that they can get a pizza as a reward. With his words of encouragement, everyone decides to pitch in to make a delivery. One by one, the Pokemon leave the playground to go deliver the pizza, except the Pichu Bros, who kind of fight to see who should carry the pizza. After they agree on who gets it, they head off too. Smoochum reaches a dead end, and out of nowhere, the Squirtle Squad appear and they begin to bully her with water guns. She gets sent flying, but Wooper is nearby. It once again tries to use water gun to save Smoochum, but it can't stay up for too long, and it ends up falling down, knocking them both out and leaving the pizzas soggy. And then Teddiursa is about to eat the pizza in an alley when he gets crushed by the sleeping Snorlax. Pichu Lil has a brilliant idea to use his wooden plank as a seesaw, and he jumps over the wooden fence, landing on Houndour's head, angering the dog in the process. Because they aren't paying attention, they run into Magby, and they proceed to drop their pizzas. Being hit accidentally angers Magby, who shoots off a flamethrower, which hits the Houndour. This scares him and he runs away. So the posse returns with all of their pizzas damaged, and this saddens Meowth as he knows he'll get him fired. He does get fired, but immediately finds himself a new job working as a janitor. As he's working, the posse shows up to his job wanting to make up for the past mistake. They all show him that they'll do their best and he agrees to it and starts to drink tea on the bench while everyone works. While they're cleaning, Pichu Lil gets bored, so he and his big brother run off to go do something. So when Meowth notices where they're at, they're on top of a moon statue cleaning. A series of unfortunate events leads to the moon statue falling and causing a domino effect of statues to fall. The final statue hits the Gyarados water fountain, which causes the floor to be flooded with water and costs Meowth his job. Meowth is sad at the park with no motivation to go do work, but the posse shows up and tries to cheer him up with acorns. The only problem is that Meowth doesn't even like acorns, but he still does his best to enjoy them. Regardless of not being able to build his own monument, he was very happy with how he felt in the moment, so he stayed there in happiness. The first part of the episode is entitled Christmas Night. The episode begins in a fun winter beach where Ash, Misty, and Brock and their Pokemon are spending their Christmas holidays. Ash, Misty, and Brock head out to pick up the Christmas cake, leaving their Pokemon behind to watch the place. As soon as they leave, Togepi leads a charge as they wander around until they find this very intriguing door that's slightly open. They open the door, and what greets them is a beautiful room ornamented with Christmas decorations with a sumptuous banquet set before them. They all hop on the table and play with all the food and accessories in there. At one point, Bulbasaur finds a cookie molded into a Bulbasaur shape, but Squirtle accidentally pops off a party popper, shocking both of them, which leads to Squirtle eating the Bulbasaur cookie instead. Squirtle is sorry about it, but Bulbasaur wouldn't let him go. So Squirtle runs away and plays catch with Bulbasaur. They run around the dining hall, and one by one, a series of disasters has transpired. Vulpix gets its head stuck in a shoe. Bulbasaur's Vine Whip causes the Christmas tree to almost tumble. Squirtle trips by the Christmas light as Pikachu single-handedly stops the tree from falling. And the final straw is Psyduck accidentally popping a cork off a bottle, landing a direct hit on Pikachu, and the Christmas tree tumbles on top of Pikachu. Bulbasaur and Squirtle make fun of Pikachu, and Pikachu has had enough of their shenanigans. So he unleashes a powerful Thunderbolt which only burns out the lights in the room. Pikachu finds a musical box which plays a cute Christmas song for a short while until it stops. This saddens everyone, but Pikachu comes up with the idea for all of them to work together to rebuild the Christmas tree, and by the time Ash, Misty, and Brock arrive, they surprise them with a cute and wholesome Christmas spectacular. The episode ends with all of them delighted as they party all night under the Christmas-spirited moonlight.
The second part of this episode is entitled Kanga Games. It begins with Ash, Misty, and Brock arriving at a cabin in the middle of the woods amidst the freezing cold season. The next morning, Pikachu is awakened with the bright ray of sunlight, and he invites everyone to play in the snow. Everyone seems to be enjoying the snowy playground, even Onyx joins in on the fun. Togepi enjoys walking around, creating footprints, and watching everyone's footprints, and I guess face prints in the snow? Togepi wanders off too far that he comes across a very large footprint that doesn't belong to any of them. He follows them until a giant Pokemon shows up before them. It turns out to be a Kangaskhan who's a fun and loving mother and encourages her kid to play with the Pokemon. At first, baby Kangaskhan is scared to play, but a little bit of help from Pikachu, Squirt, and Bulbasaur, and baby Kangaskhan eventually joins the gang and plays snowball throwing with them. Meowth is here too. But before he could even throw a snowball at them, he already rolls off into the mountains. The cute Pokemon continue playing with the snowballs until baby Kangaskhan and Togepi find a small sled. Pikachu joins in too, and Bulbasaur grabs Squirtle with his vines and uses him as his own sled. Onyx doesn't want to be left out from the fun, so he also brings Geodude, Vulpix, and Psyduck to go slide with him. All the Pokemon are enjoying their best lives, but they didn't realize that they're already headed straight into a lake. Good thing Mother Kangaskhan comes to the rescue and stops all of them from falling into the lake. At that point, they all just decide to play with Mother Kangaskhan, and we even get a scene of Pikachu playing in Kangaskhan's pouch. I know he misses his original mother. Sunset soon comes, and the mother and child have to say goodbye to their friends after a super fun day. Kangaskhan walks back into the mountains just in time for Ash, Misty, and Brock to arrive. All the Pokemon excitedly return to their trainers, and they head home together.